All right, so since everyone's already playing the mobile game, why don't we go ahead and jump right in, please. Kari Weaver.
Hi, everyone. So we'll go back to the start of this again. And like I said, I'm talking about issues of student resistance, which I've heard a lot about that. But even if you're not dealing with student resistance, I think you'll learn a little bit about curiosity in this. So we went into the Padlet. That's great. Saved me a little bit of time there. In this session, I'll do a lightning fast positionality, talk about some student concerns and context strategies, and just close with an invitation to share. So I'm the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning at the Cleveland Institute of Art. This is my 6th college and 3rd art college that I've been at. I have had 20 years of being an educator in higher education, mostly art history, but some other things as well. But the positionality I bring specifically to this topic today is as a social scientist, right? We're just naturally curious. We're curious about human behavior, about society, about social relationships. You'll notice some of my doctoral training comes in here because I'm going to talk about theories of learning. And I'm really positioning the student at the center of this. So it's a very student-centered focus. And then finally, I have been grateful to have difficult dialogues training as part of my doctoral studies with Dr. Sherry Watt. We're part of a research collective that published this book a few years ago. And so in that work, we really are all about welcoming complexity, right? And in that book, we have a series of touchstones, and one of my favorite is about living the questions. And the idea is when it's hard, turn to wonder, right? And one of the parts of that touchstone is that I wonder what my reaction teaches me about myself, right? I wonder about what my reaction teaches me to AI, teaches me about myself. Our reactions to AI teach us a lot about ourselves, about us as humans, about society, about what we need, what we want, and what forces exist in the world. So this is a very revealing moment through us. So let's get into curiosity. Why look at curiosity? Why focus on this when we're talking about student resistance and about teaching and learning? Well, for one, it affects our ability to handle change and complexity, and it reduces anxiety. If any of you are in the college sphere or have teenagers, you know a little bit about anxiety, right, and the prevalence of it. It drives active and effective learning, information seeking, and exploratory behavior. It supports open-mindedness, or open-minded engagement with difference. And it can actually make people more open to hearing others' opinions, even if they differ from one's own. So that's really important if we want productive disagreement and avoid issues like confirmation bias and groupthink, something I think all of us could use a little more of in our lives. And we in social science love to operationalize constructs like curiosity. So one way that's been operationalized is openness to experience. And openness to experience has been found to predict creative achievement in the arts. I'm going to take 2 little side tours in this, just kind of how my brain works, but I'm going to try and keep us on the main path, but I couldn't help it, right? The first one was about anxiety, because I was so curious when putting together this presentation about, wait, how does curiosity, how does anxiety work with curiosity? What does that mean? So this is from a study about habit loops. And it said that oftentimes we meet unpleasant emotions or thoughts with worry, right? And sometimes we feel like that worry is actually productive. I'm working on it. I'm working on it by worrying about it, right? But oftentimes that's actually really distracting. It's distracting us from taking action. It promotes avoidance. It inhibits problem solving. Right? But sometimes it does feel like we're doing something. So we're like, it worked. So next time we have an unpleasant emotion or thought, guess what? Worry, right? And we teach ourselves to keep in this cycle. Sometimes we realize we're worrying too much. We start worrying about the worrying itself, right? So we have this unpleasant emotion or thought, and then we start worrying and we're like, oh no, I'm worrying too much about this. That's an unpleasant emotion or thought. Oh no, right? Start us in a new loop, yeah. And so researchers were curious about what if we meet that unpleasant emotion or thought with curiosity? What happens? So they did a study with a group of people with generalized anxiety disorder and started teaching them how to meet these unpleasant emotions or thoughts with curiosity. Guess what happened? It felt good. Right? They started thinking about what problems they could solve, things that they could do. And because it felt good, ooh, that's a reward. So guess what? Next time unpleasant emotion or thought, curiosity. Feels better than worry, right? Amazing. It worked, like it had the effect 7 times that of medication, right? With these people with generalized anxiety disorder. Amazing, love it, okay. Side tangent, let's go back. Hopefully you feel in this that curiosity is important, right? So let's think about what inhibits it and what promotes it. I like this list of inhibitors from this 2019 study. It is about workplace inhibitors to curiosity, but I think it still functions well. So they found 4 main inhibitors. Fear of failure, fear of being embarrassed, fear that one feels a lack of control. Assumptions. People assume that this isn't of interest to me. It doesn't matter to me. I don't need this, right? Or I've already got too much to do. I am not driven enough to do that too. Technology itself. Right? Maybe a lack of exposure to the technology. Maybe we just feel like, oh, it's too much. It's too much information, right? I can't learn it all. It's moving too fast. It's changing too much. Or, you know what? I've seen this before. It gets a little wacky and then it works itself out and it'll tell me how to use it, right? Finally, the environment. So the impact of others especially, and the impact of the environment. Maybe they're hearing all the time from their peers, don't use it, it's terrible, right? Burn it with fire, kill it with fire, right? You can't do that, that makes you a terrible person. Maybe they're hearing educators say, you have to use it. No choice, you're gonna fail if you don't, right? That has its own repercussions. Okay, so let's look. I think we can go into this and I won't mess things up too much, but I can't make promises. Let's look at that Padlet. And so keep those in mind: fear, assumptions, technology, environment, fate, F-A-T-E, right? Looking at those student concerns, look over them. I'm trying to see it. Oh yeah, that one's got a lot, 5. Likes on the loss of artistic authenticity and creative integrity, contributes to a devaluation of artists and creative labor, copyright and intellectual property rights, environmental impacts. So when we look at these concerns of students, and when you think about the concerns of students, okay, I'm going to try and go back to this. We did it. What do you see most of out of those 4? What do you feel like you see most of? If you had to put them under one of those categories. Fear. I heard fear and assumptions. Fear. Do students have anything to fear right now? I have a couple of kids, and one is 16, and she says to me, I don't know if I'll ever be able to afford a house. So I'm just trying not to think about that. I don't know if I'll ever pay off student loans if I go to college. I don't know if what I study in college will actually matter. I don't know. She wants to be an artist. I love it. I'm so glad. I don't panic at all. I'm so grateful. I truly am. I truly am. Love her. There's a lot to fear. Will the planet be sustainable, right, by the time I'm 20 or 30? Our students have a lot to fear. These aren't little fears, like lowercase f fear. These are big, huge, existential fears. No wonder curiosity is hard. Motivation's hard, right? How much do you put into it? How much do you risk, right? It is challenging. They're trying to take a position. They're trying to fight for something, right? And oftentimes I have to tell them, you're fighting the wrong people. We're the ones in the same boat with you, right? We're fighting the same fight. But it's hard to say that when I already have a job and I have a house and I'm okay, right? I've gathered enough skills that I'm flexible. It's hard for me to say, don't worry, right? Get open-minded to it. Too tough. Okay, so let's think about what actually promotes curiosity. So when I was looking at this, the first thing I found was impulsivity. And as somebody with ADHD, I was like, oh no. Maybe that's why. But this really had to do with impulsive choice, right? So not just like feeling like, yeah, I should learn that. No, I should learn that now. Made sense to me when I think about, oh, you know, we're in education facing challenges to some institutions even staying open, right? Keeping jobs. No wonder many of us are like, I better learn this. I better do it right now, right? We have a lot of reason to. Another study I found was if anybody can read this right away and know exactly what it's saying, I'm really impressed. I would love to talk to you about your education. But I'm fascinated by neurobiology, right, and how this functions. I put this in plain language for you though, is that you notice something isn't working the way it should, and then you realize you have a gap in your knowledge, and that makes you curious. Wait, how did that happen? How does that work? How did they do that, right? Here's our second side tangent. I promise we'll get right back to this. So I mapped this out with a couple of different examples because I was like, wait, how does that work? I want to understand this better. And I'm sharing with you the animation example. I'm not in animation, so I had to ask some of our faculty, like, is this real? Because I generated this with ChatGPT. I don't have enough knowledge to know the examples in here, right? I could do it in my own area, but that wouldn't be so helpful for all of you. So in these examples, they're looking at, right, you hear AI can automate in-betweening, but you don't know how it handles motion arcs or squash and stretch principles. That's where I asked a faculty member, I'm like, is it making those terms up or is that real? Okay, that's real good. But what do you have to know to even have that question of curiosity? Does it actually understand animation principles or is it blending frames? How could I test that? You'd actually have to know animation. You'd have to have foundational knowledge to even have that curiosity, right? Many of our students aren't there. They aren't in a space to have curiosity, right? So we gotta step back from that more and understand also that expertise and foundational knowledge is really crucial. Okay, so what supports curiosity more broadly, right, for all of our students? So here's where I'm going to connect it to theories of learning. And my favorite theories of learning when we're talking about transformative change and perspective transformation come from Mezirow and Freire. Anybody familiar with either Mezirow or Freire? Yes, I saw a couple hands, great. So transformative learning comes from Mezirow, problem posing education comes from Freire. So transformative learning, there's certain aspects of it. Critical reflection and self-reflection are crucial, right? Not just understanding, you know, oh, I feel this way or I value this, but wait, why? Why do I feel that way? Why do I value that? Let's get that in a more critical space. The second one is that learners need to feel agentic in decision making. And wow, am I glad I'm going on day 2, because how many times yesterday did we hear about agency and choice, right? Dr. McTeer mentioned that ethical practices maximize people's choice of how they engage with AI because it makes it more transparent. It helps you choose, right? It helps you have that informed choice. Professor Winger-Bearskin talked about choice of her students to use, even though they were very focused in AI use. You know, okay, it's okay if you don't use it, you just have to learn about it. Right? And I don't care if you end up with more arguments against it. Great, you still learn something about it. You learn more about it. So that choice and agency is crucial. Second, or the last part of transformative learning that I'm bringing up here is that learners need to know that others have experienced similar struggles and changes. We heard from Peter and Kurt yesterday about, you know, I thought about it, I looked at it, I worked with it. Peter made some decisions, Kurt made others. Right? They thought about it. They thought about how to utilize it for what they wanted. Our students oftentimes, first off, you know, many of our students, they aren't in the part where their prefrontal cortex has finished, right, developing. They can't see around corners, right? This does feel brand new to them, just like absolutely no idea how one might do this, right? So we have to help them see the possibilities around the corners, right? Help them see it's possible, see that other people have struggled with this and thought about it. Okay, so problem posing education. That's a praxis orientation. So we need to encourage students to be critical and action-oriented thinkers. And Freire talks about this as we need to have reflection and action upon the world in order to transform it. We need to feel empowered, right? That we can act in ways upon the world. And then the next, I'll kind of combine them together, that dialogue is critical, knowledge is co-constructed, and we need to be power conscious, right? Freire talks about how power is knowledge, right? So who creates it? Who owns it? And going beyond the I'm going to have it and give it to you as students to let's create this, right? Let's understand that we're all kind of working through this. Freire advocates that teachers should respect students' knowledge, begin with their knowledge, and remain humble about the limitations of their own knowledge. And we really have to get them, and Timothy talked about this, beyond just the good-bad binary. The choices are much more complex. Right? We have to welcome them into that complexity so that they can make more nuanced choices, so that the choices are more possible. Okay, so how do we get to dialogues that support change? Because that's what I'm focused on for today, is dialogues that support change. So both Mesereau and Freire provide guidance for dialogues that promote change. They involve the assessment of beliefs, feelings, and values. They include perspective taking and critical self-reflection. Perspective taking is trying to understand others' perspectives. It requires open-mindedness, empathetic listening, and emotional intelligence. We all need help with developing this. So understand that your students need help too, right? We need to teach these things. And then I'm going to bring these next two together a little bit. We need a lack of or mitigation of inhibitors. I was talking about inhibitors before, but one part is an appeal to tradition, appeal to an authority figure, or use of force, right? That's not going to help. And then we also need to explore those assumptions about how things work and are supposed to be, or supposed to happen, right? So this is important. What are the issues we feel like we need to honor in these discussions, right? What if it's an appeal to the authority figure? How can they start to see you in a different way as maybe not an authority of AI, but definitely an authority in your field, right? You still are a leader in that. And they need to do this in ways that they can actually talk about these bigger forces that are happening. They need to understand that sometimes it feels like they thought college was supposed to go this way, and maybe it's just not, right? Maybe they need to rethink that about how they'll learn or how they'll be. And we need to do that as faculty too, because we might have had really transformative experiences in our learning. It doesn't mean that they're going to be transformative for our students too, right? We need to really understand what works for them and need to think about how we're educating them in ways that work. And then finally, we need to identify ways to act against any oppressive forces. And I want to note in here, I'm trying to watch the time, that I say dialogues, not dialogue. This needs to happen in a continuing way, right? And I love this quote from Freire, because it really helps us think about how students are still developing. So they might be at a stage where their thinking, quote, still involves some thought and action for change, but they're addressing problems one at a time and as they happen, right? Rather than seeing the problem as one of society in general. It's hard to see the big picture. At that stage, an individual may follow a strong leader who is seen as one who can change one's lot in life. Oh no. The quotes, the rest of the quotes. Here, this is the problem with going analog. They're going to follow one who's going to change one's lot in life. They're going to, if they feel like you all as faculty might have the answers for how they move forward, they might listen to you too deeply, right? They're looking for that guidance. So you have to be really careful about not telling them what exactly to do, but help them figure that out on their own. Okay, so I have made for you an example discussion or dialogue for AI use in art making, pulling some of these together. So let's say that we really want students to be curious about AI applications in art making. I just want you to wonder about it, right? Why? Because we want you to think about different tools or technology that you might use in your practice. We want you to have some critical self-reflection. That's really important for all of us, and especially as artists and designers, to know your own voice, to know why. And we want them to understand why others might explore these options even if they decide not to. Because there is so much pressure from their peers when they start saying, burn it down, and one person says, but I wonder if it could, that's hard, right? So we need to get them to be more empathetic to one another. So I'll offer this up, the whole slide deck I'll put up on the Padlet as well, but I'll, as my kids say, speed run this part. So you do want to connect to their thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and values. We're really good in education by over-focusing on the cognitive, right? And that is learning. No, we are entire people. We have emotions and we have bodies, right? So connect to that. It's hard to. We're very disconnected from it. So get them tapped into their thoughts, their feelings, right? How they feel physically. Help them focus on the one that is the strongest for them. Why do I believe that? Where did that come from? Right? Give them some ways in. Have them explore one this most deeply, right? How does that connect to your beliefs or values as an artist? Get them to really understand that. Address the factors that inhibit curiosity. Talk to them a little bit about that. Have them choose a thought to focus on. Where did that come from, right? Invite people to share and ask others to listen deeply. Listen to understand, not listen to defend or judge. Listen to understand as if that was your own perspective. Listen, right? And then have them explore that and say, okay, how might these thoughts or beliefs change the way I look at other people's art or as them as artists if I feel this way about AI and art making? Am I treating others in a problematic way? Am I thinking less critically about others, right? And then have them look for examples of work by artists utilizing AI who share their values or interests and ask them to share what they've found. None of this is them utilizing AI, though it'll be in their searches and whatnot, but you're just asking them to practice some empathy and be open to more possibilities. We want to be seen. Look at the reactions to your exhibit, which we had similar things at CIA. They want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to be understood. Give them the options reasons for that. So I'll close there, and I will say, if you have thoughts, or even if you're like, how would I do this with this kind of curiosity I'm trying to promote, put it in there. I'll map it out. I'll work with you on that. Don't rely on ChatGPT to do it, because it's terrible. They don't have expertise in this kind of human reaction to dialogues. If you are at an ACAD school, if you knew my name when I came up here, and it might be because you've gotten a lot of emails from me, you can sign up for the ACAD Cross-Institutional Dialogue Series, which is starting in January. So ACAD Schools, Association of Independent Colleges of Art and Design. So I'd love to see you in those dialogues as well. I'm co-leading that with others, including Jennifer Phillips. Do you want to? Yep, from SBA. Wonderful. So thank you so much. Sorry if I went over time.
You're right on time.
Hey!